So last year I was out riding and I started getting a parking brake alarm on my display panel on my 600 Summit here, and did a little bit of research on it, and the code would go away, but it's annoying and it beeps, and did a little bit of research, and some people are saying change the switch, could be a bad connection somewhere, maybe even the tail light, some water. I looked at the tail light looks good, and I re-put dielectric grease in it, but after looking at the wiring diagram, and I'll show you what the wiring diagram looks like, I noticed that the way this basically works is you have a 12 volt power that's fed to your brake light switch, and that brake light switch runs with a white wire all the way down to the tail light. But while it's on its way down to the tail light, there's another wire that feeds off in a junction that goes to the ECM. And that ECM basically is the one that's knowing that the brake lights are on and the parking brake is on. So I guess if you have a defective switch, it'll notice that you've got your brakes on, and if it goes on for so many seconds, I guess the alarm goes on. But the weird thing is the rear light's not coming on. So when this is in this mode, in which it was basically all day yesterday, the brake light doesn't come on, but the stupid thing thinks that the brakes are on. So I got a quick fix for this. What we're going to do is we're going to actually cut the wire that goes to the ECM that gives it the 12 volt signal. So I'll show you guys that on the diagram, and I'll show you which one and how I found it. And we're going to snip it, and we're going to see if my problem goes away or if I just created a bigger problem. So let's go look at the wiring diagram. So I've got a 215 Summit 600 XM. I'm sure the XM XS 214 and up are all the same here. So you have your brake light switch, you have a red power, 12 volt power goes onto the one side of the switch, and a white wire that leaves the switch, which is when you actually apply the brakes, where the contacts close. And that white wire goes into one of the connectors right on the handlebar, and then it goes back into another main connector. And then if we move on here, that white wire leaves the connector, comes down, and then it goes into a junction. One end goes to the tail light, and the other goes to the ECM, or the computer on the sled. So this is pin 30 on a 600, and I think it's pin 25 on an 800. And we put the tester on it to see if we had the right wire, and we'll go and look at that in a second. But basically the way this works is there's a 5 volt reference voltage sent to this wire, and when you apply the brakes, your 12 volt signal comes down to light the light and send 12 volt positive to the ECM, and that's how it knows that the brakes are on. So my thought is, if I just cut this, if I could find this junction, I would just disable it there, but I can't find it. It's buried into the harness, and I'm not going to dig that up. But if I cut this wire right here, then the ECM will never know that I put the brake on, even though they do come on or off, and I don't see how that could be an issue. I've read on DoTalk that the BRP has a patch or a fix that it could disable this, and it'll just ignore it. I'll ignore it the other way here. But so I located the white wire that goes to the top connector on the ECM, and luckily it's actually identified pin 30, so it just happens to be identified on the connector 30, and it is the white wire. And I put this piercing probe to do the test here, and I know these things aren't the best thing for electrical wires, but since I am going to cut it, and I do want to make sure I'm cutting the right wire here, I put the probe on. So it's the white wire going from here down into the harness, going into a junction, and connecting to the white wire that's coming from the parking brake. So let's do a little test to make sure that this is the right wire here, and I'll show you how I did that. So I'm going to start the sled up. Right now, obviously, I'm not reading any voltage. I got my probe on the positive side here onto the white wire, and then I have my negative onto the engine. And we're going to start it up, and we're going to see is a 5 volt reference voltage, and then I'll apply the brakes. So here we go. I have my 5 volt reference. When I put on the brakes, I get the 14.5 on the battery. Let the brakes go, put it back on. Okay, so that confirms that that's the right wire. And now what we're going to do is we're going to snip it up, and we're going to protect it. And from now on, the ECM should know that we have brakes on this sled, and that light shouldn't come back on. All right, so here's, as my son would say, the moment of disaster. I'm gonna cut this wire right here, and what I'm basically gonna do here is that I'm gonna cut it in between here, So if I ever did a mistake here and this thing wants it, I have a little bit of material to work on to try to rebuild it, which I doubt that'll happen, but just in case. So here it goes. So the wire is now cut. I no longer have a signal going to the ECM. So we're going to patch that up and seal it and then reassemble this and start her back up. We'll put a little bit of dielectric grease here on these tips where I did the I'm just going to put a little heat shrink tube on it and do that. Okay, and I'm going to bend this over and I'm going to put another one. Put another one here. Bend it. Oh, I just lost that piece. I'll have to find another one. That should be good. So that's well protected. That's well protected. Hopefully I never have to put that back together, but we're going to put this back together, start her up, see how she runs. And in the comments below or in the description below, I'll give you guys an update if this thing ever came back on or not after doing this quick little mod. So put her all back together, start her up, no problem, no engine codes, brake light works. So if your switch is defective, these things are 65 bucks Canadian to replace your micro switch on your brake light on this sled. Probably less in the US, but 65 Canadian, so which is no common sense there. But I did have a spare one. I didn't install it because the brake light, like I said, does work. And I think there's also something I read on a lot of guys when they're putting their parking brakes on for a long period of time. This switch becomes, has issues, and it's probably because the contact is open for a long time and maybe condensation, I don't know, gets in there and it's a little flakier. And I do put it on the parking brake when I'm trailering it out to where we're going, so, and I do have the problem. But now the wire's cut, so you can either spend if your brake light switch is working, you can either spend 65 bucks on a new one and try that to see if your problem goes away, or do like I did, and then for $0, snip the wire, the ECM, and your problem goes away. So that's it. We will, like I said, put a comment in the description below should we have anything to report back that this did or did not work, but right now there's no reason why it wouldn't. All the codes, everything, there's no codes and everything is working properly. So I hope you enjoyed the video.